All right, folks, what's up? Brian Slater here. We got Adam Michelangelo Novelli on the screen here as well. Clearly loves his middle name, as indicated by his facial expressions there. We are coming to you live and direct from the mean streets of Puyallup, Washington. Novelli is out in the Tack Town. The 253. I guess we're all in the 253, but somehow Tacoma was able to claim those rights. So we're here today going to talk about the 25-point program. Hope everyone's doing well at home, staying off the streets, staying out of harm's way. We miss you. This is new to all of us. We're going to figure out how to make it work. I figured I'd go big and do a whole YouTube content creator setup here, complete with the mic. Novelli, what'd you say? I look like who?
Colin Coward.
Yeah, let's go. He's from here.
He's from Washington.
Yeah, Washington. Yeah, I mean, that's
from a very small town in Washington.
Mm-hmm. Do you know which town he's from?
No, I can Google it.
Yeah, Google it real quick. You'll be our certified fact checker as we go through the 25-point program today. As you know, we assigned this last week, and the expectation was that you and your interactive notebooks would go through and summarize the 25 points in 3 to 7 words or so. That's what we're going to do today. We're going to go over the 25-point program. We might get into a little bit of the creation of the NSDAP and what brought Hitler to the party itself. We'll see if we got any time. We're going to try to keep these videos down to maybe 30 minutes or so. That way you're not bored out of your minds listening to us drone on and on. We hope to make it as entertaining as possible. That being said, we are learning about history. So, no disrespect intended to those who love history here in the room, Mr. Novelli included. All right. Novelli, you got anything you want to say before we get started?
No, just excited to connect with some students and get talking history again, even though this is new to all of us.
Do you not have an answer to Coward's hometown?
It's Aberdeen, which isn't small, is it?
It is. It's, out on the coast. It's not, it's definitely not a large town by any means. It's pretty small. Used to be home to a lot of the forestry services in our state. So,
okay, there
you go, man. You learn something new about the state of Washington, the great state of Washington, every time we interact. So,
yeah.
All right, let's talk about this party platform established 1920. This is actually before Hitler was involved, but it was certainly this political party that captivated him. It was in pretty strong alignment with his own beliefs at the end of the First World War. You can see as we went through in class, the first 3 points here really have to do with the abrogation of the Treaty of Versailles. It's basically clear anger toward the imposed treaty, what the Germans call it a dictate, D-I-K-T-A-T, an imposed settlement placed upon them. You can see right out of the gates there a problem with the number of Germans that had been repatriated to nations outside of Germany. They wanted all those Germans reunified into Germany again. Second is equal rights and just rip up the Treaty of Versailles and Saint-Germain. The Treaty of Saint-Germain was applied to Austria after the First World War. Germany thought they had it bad. Austria had it way worse. They were landlocked. Hungary was landlocked as well. So Germany didn't have it all that bad relative to Austria. The third is give us back our empire. We're going to need empire again, and we demand it. And then when it gets to the fourth point, this is when it becomes clearly anti-Semitic. Simple logic point here. Only a member of the race can be a citizen. A member of the race can only be one who is of German blood without consideration of creed. And as a result, in case you haven't been following along, no Jew can be a member of this race. And this was, you can see very early on that the theme is we hate the Treaty of Versailles and we really don't want Jews as citizens in our society. And then the fifth point, it now builds off of that, right? So because Jews cannot be citizens, then everything from this point forward is kind of a shot at Jews. So if you don't have citizenship, then you're not able to live in Germany, or if you do, you're a guest. And as a guest, you are subject to laws that we write for guests, for foreigners. The irony here, Novelli, is that you know who a foreigner was at this time in Germany?
Hitler?
Adolf Hitler. Yeah, he was not a citizen of Germany at this time. So quite interesting that he was, considered a foreigner here at this point. But we'll deal with that later. Number 6, the right to determine matters concerning administration and law belongs only to the citizen. So again, public office can only be held by Germans and not by Jews. Number 7, we get a little bit here into some socialist concepts, but really, again, not entirely socialism. It's a statement of belief that the state their first priority should be to provide for a livelihood for citizens. That should be the number one priority obligation of the state of Germany, is to simply provide for its people. And then you see there another shot that any member of a foreign nation, non-citizens, should be expelled from the right, clearly laying the foundation for Hitler's policies once he's going to obtain the role of Führer in the society. You got any questions yet?
Well, I was going to say, this is mainly pointed at the Jews, yeah? I mean, even though they specifically say so earlier, that's pretty much his major intention.
Correct. Yep.
So another thing I was thinking about is, it just seems interesting to me that when we look at some of these points, specifically concerned with economics, they definitely do have a kind of a socialist tinge to it.
Mm-hmm.
And this is going to be one of the first groups of people that he kind of seeks out to diminish their power in the state. So like, how does he comport that reality where he's kind of propagating this idea that he believes in some of these ideals, but then later on, he's going to kind of repudiate the groups of people that subscribe to these?
Well, you got to remember, socialism is a very liberal. It's on the very left wing of the political spectrum, and the socialist concepts embedded in the NSDAP's party platform were not, they weren't what drew Hitler to this party. It was the nationalist concepts, in particular these first couple points we've already addressed here. That is what attracted Hitler to the party. So as we get further into this and discuss what happened in the party, you're going to hear, I mean, he basically is going to expel the socialist wing led by Gregor Strasser from the party itself. And by expelling that wing, he's going to take the party and make it entirely nationalist in nature. So, it's like not every party platform is going to appeal. Like 100% of a platform is not going to appeal to all people. The nationalist aspects of this platform is really what he was interested in. I don't know if did I get your question answered?
Yeah, and then I just have a quick question, because I don't know where you were at, but yesterday before we recorded this, we had a pretty interesting discussion about how Hitler first came into contact with this political party. Have you talked about that with your students?
I have not. No, I think we can get to it at the end of today, though.
Okay, cool. I look forward to that.
Yeah. All right. Let's keep rolling. Point number 8, stop immigration. Don't let any non-citizens enter Germany. And you see, I mean, look at the date there. If you came to Germany at the beginning of the First World War, that's what August 2nd, 1914 is, then if you came anytime after the First World War began, you got to go. So, it's pretty clear nationalists there. Give us back our nation, and if you're a visitor, you got to go. Number 9, all citizens have to have equal rights and obligations. Very similar to our 14th Amendment there. 10th, the first obligation of every citizen is to work, period. Spiritually, physically, you got to work hard. And this activity is not to counteract the interest of the universality. but must have its result within the framework of the whole for the benefit of all. Consequently, we demand. And then here the next several points are dealing with work. So it's sort of like number 10.10 is like, all right, let's talk about what we need from the population when it comes to the work they do. And it goes into number 11 here. First and foremost, the abolition of unearned incomes, the breaking of rent slavery. I'm not sure what rent slavery is, but I just know that the unearned work and labor income is basically saying that if you're collecting benefits from the society and you're not working, then that's got to end.
I would anticipate that rent slavery has at least something to do with kind of what we see in a lot of metropolitan areas in this country, where rent is so high that if you're employed, such a large percentage of your income goes to your rent in the first place that you don't really have enough income to live a fulfilling life because so much
Fantastic.
of it is being paid to landlords.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I mean, that sounds spot on. I imagine that that's what it is. Number 12 here, the in consideration of the monstrous sacrifice and property and blood that each war demands of the people, personal enrichment through a war must be designated as a crime against the people. Therefore, we demand the total confiscation of all war profits. This is obviously steered right at what we've already discussed thoroughly, something known as war profiteering. Not only do they want to abolish it, they want to designate any profit made off of war as a crime against the people. This is clearly pointed at the Jewish war profiteers as identified by people who were anti-Semitic. There was a perception out there that the Jews wanted the First World War to continue as a result of the profits they were making. There's very little evidence to support that the bulk of war profits were going to the Jewish capitalists. This was just basically a shot at again kind of a dog whistle at Jewish capitalists here, number 12.
Yeah, and so these were sentiments that weren't just held by Hitler. This was like a pretty broad percentage of the population ultimately believed that the Jews were just attempting to make money off the losses of blood and soldiers of the German state. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and keep in mind that Drexler, the creator of this party, he wrote this platform without any input from Hitler. So this platform was it was an arena. This party was an arena that Hitler discovered, and we'll talk about that here in a couple minutes. But these sentiments were held by a number of Germans. We called those Volkisch groups. Those Volkisch groups were primarily where hatred for toward people, in particular the Jews, was held. And so we'll get to that. I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves here, but 13, let's nationalize all previous associated industries. We demand division of profits of all heavy industries. We demand an expansion on a large scale of old age welfare. Let's take care of our elderly population. This stuff's pretty straightforward here. Number 16, let's try to, most societies have a very large, significant middle class. So you're going to always want to make sure your party platform targets them. And they want to create a creation of a healthy middle class, conserve the middle class, immediate communalization of the great warehouses, and they're being leased at low cost to small firms. Here you go for the small business owner. Let's take care of the little guy, is what point number 16 is saying. Let's make sure we're making capital accessible to them. Land reform, number 17. We demand a land reform suitable to our needs, provision of a law for the free expropriation of land for the purposes of public utility, the abolition of taxes on land, and prevention of all speculation in land. Let's abolish property taxes is what they're asking there.
So what reform are they trying to seek? Like, what current state do they find untenable?
Well, keep in mind the Treaty of Versailles, they lost 10% of their property, of their territory, and in addition, in that 10%, they lost 13% of their population. And so I'm guessing it has to do with with, arable land. They just want land reform. I think that the idea is let's I think it was probably targeting small farmers, and likely, I mean, you see here it says public utility. Let's improve the infrastructure in our society as a result of land reform. That's
Okay.
kind of how I read it,
Yeah.
especially with that addition of the public utility there.
Okay.
What's that? You broke up there. Oh, I don't know if you can hear me or not, but I'm going to keep going here. Let's see, number 19. Can you hear me all right, Novelli?
Yeah, now I can.
Okay,
You cut
all
it
right.
for a second.
Okay. We demand substitution of a German common law in place of the Roman law, serving a materialistic world order. So Roman law is it kind of underscores. I mean, we're talking about the republic here, a republic, a capitalist society. The French Revolution, for example, the American Revolution, these are revolutions that implemented a republic in the society. And the last thing that the NSDAP was interested in, I think, did my camera just shut off, Novelli?
No, I see you.
Okay. The republic was a concept that, as we've covered already, just was not the Germans were not excited about this. They had a monarchy prior to the Weimar Republic. So 18 is kind of like, let's get back to the German way of doing things. 20, the state is responsible for fundamental reconstruction of our national education program. Allow every German to obtain higher education. Plans of instruction of all educational institutions are to conform with the experiences of practical life. Comprehension of the concept of the state must be striven for by the school as early as the beginning of understanding. We demand the education at the expense of the state of outstanding intellectually gifted children of poor parents without consideration of position or profession. This is basically saying if your child is gifted, they should have access to the best educational services we have, regardless of family of origin that this child comes from. It's really to take care of the gifted. Is what this point is ending with. But let's engage in a socialist system of education. Let's take care all the way up through college, basically. 21, the state is to care for the elevating national health by protecting the mother and child, by outlawing child labor, encouragement of physical fitness. This is essentially saying here, let's get back to the traditional way of living. Let's allow women to stay home with their babies. And let's make sure that all of our kids are engaging in physical fitness. And you know where this is going, right? They want to make sure that every young male is ready for war in the future. To do so, we need to make sure everyone is engaging in sports and gymnastics and keep everyone physically fit. Number 22, we need a national army. Again, this is a shot at the Treaty of Versailles, which limited the national army to 100,000 soldiers. Let's get rid of that concept and let's get back to having a national army. Number 23, we demand legal opposition to known lies and their promulgation through the press. This is, let's use the weight of the law to keep the press from being able to lie to the people. And you see here, look at these stipulations. That if you're going to be in the press, you got to be German. You got to be members of the race. Any non-German newspapers would have to have express permission of the state to be published. So if you're a Jew and you have a newspaper publishing company, you don't get to have it anymore. They may not be printed in the German language if they are from a foreign, quote unquote foreign race. Non-Germans are forbidden by law any financial interest in German publications. You don't get to invest in German publications if you're not a German. You don't get influence. And you see it continues on. Publications which are counter to the general good are to be forbidden. Here you go. Counter to the general good as defined by whom? The NSDAP. the Germans get to define what general good means. We demand legal prosecution of artistic literary forms which exert a destructive influence on our national life, and the closure of organizations opposing the above made demands.
Hey, I'd like to make a comment on that real
Go ahead.
quick.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So I find it interesting, when we're looking at some of these points before, a lot of them are pretty vague.
Mm-hmm.
And this one is super specific.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it kind of speaks to how focused they were on controlling the flow of information.
Correct.
Yeah. And so that's just kind of a fascinating thing that they chose to be kind of hyper specific on, is this idea of the sharing of information in a free state.
Correct. Yeah. The press. I mean, that is a free press is what makes a nation free. And so you see here, they're not interested in a free press. They're interested in a Germanic press.
Yeah, that's well put.
Yeah. And so you see 24, we demand freedom of religion, but it can only be religion that does not oppose the existence or the moral senses of the Germanic race. So you get to practice religion, but just not a religion that we think endangers our way of life, which would be Judaism. And so you see the party as such advocates the standpoint of a positive Christianity without binding itself confessionally to any one denomination. It combats the Jewish materialistic spirit within and around us, and is convinced that a lasting recovery of our nation can only succeed from within the framework. Common utility precedes individual utility. 25, for the execution of all this, we demand the formation of a strong central power in the Reich. Unlimited authority of the central parliament over the whole Reich and its organization in general. The forming of state and profession chambers for the execution of the laws made by the Reich within the various states of the Confederation. The leaders of the party promise, if necessary, by sacrificing their own lives, to support by the execution of the points set forth above without consideration. And this is what ultimately would be the political party platform that Hitler would hitch his wagon to. So there you go. That's the 25 points. We should get this slideshow shared with the kids. That way you can kind of see what the summary looks like. You can take some of those points and merge them into a couple different themes. And so that's what you'll find there. And so when we really get down to the point of this course, the origin of an authoritarian state, as it emerged into German society, the question is, what role does ideology play in this, and how did Hitler use ideology to move the people to support him? And you see here, how does this ideology fuel the people to support Hitler? Well, it really didn't, to be honest with you. This political party was appealing to Adolf Hitler, but it was a Volkisch group. It was a group that was seen as a fringe group in German society. And it really wasn't, Hitler was certainly speaking to raucous crowds of 2,000 to 3,000 at times. We're going to talk about his beer hall push tomorrow. He was a captivator, but they weren't running and signing up in droves to join his party at the same time. So it was almost like a spectacle. It seems like, at least my understanding, it seemed like it was a spectacle to go watch Hitler speak, while you're drinking beer in your beer hall. But when he gets to the role of chancellor and he starts to use these other 4 tools that we've looked at, that we've at least talked briefly about, his charismatic style, use of propaganda, use of force, coercion, really, that's when I think the people began to come around to Hitler. To put it simply, this third point here is the ideology fueled Hitler. It fueled him. It gave him the energy, the passion that he needed to continue his quest for power. And it's what drove him in his what seems to be an unquenching thirst. And so you asked a question about how he even got to power, Novelli. Or how he got to this party, how he discovered it. What do you know right now about it?
Well, I know that after the war, he was kind of the military service was kind of his central to who he was as a person, and so he kind of had the fortune of being able to continue to be employed by the military. And I think we talked about it a little bit yesterday, but he essentially had this kind of unique job where they wanted him to kind of move around and kind of investigate a lot of these fractionalized political parties throughout the state and kind of get an understanding of their platform beliefs
Mm-hmm.
and to kind of understand where the German people were at. There was also this overarching concern that, given that there were still some militarized factions within Germany, that if they didn't control the message of soldiers following World War One,
Mm-hmm.
they could have a really bad mess on their hands, where you could see kind of an uprising. And so he kind of went around Germany and kind of basically investigated and evaluated these different political groups within the state following the end of World War One.
Yeah. Yeah. Hitler's whole identity was in the military. It was the first time, frankly, in his whole life that he felt part of something bigger than himself. And so he did everything he could to stay in the military after the war, and he got what he wanted. He was appointed to a commission of sorts in the military, like you mentioned, whose sole purpose was to investigate some of the various political parties that existed. And the military at this time was becoming very anti-Marxist, anti-socialist, frankly. And so part of this group that he was a part of, that one of their jobs was to go through and investigate the various groups, the Volkic groups that existed out there. So you see here, there were 50 different political parties in Munich, in particular, that he was tasked with investigating. It's important for the kids at home who are listening to know and not forget that Munich is in Bavaria, and Bavaria, as we've already discussed, was a hotbed of right-wing and frankly left-wing groups. And so it was on September 12th, 1919, that Hitler ended up going to the NSDAP, and he attended a meeting. And at this meeting, as he was just there to kind of spy on this political party, he found himself enthralled with one of the speakers. And then there was a professor who spoke up talking about Bavaria should secede from Germany. And Hitler jumped in and argued and basically melted this professor, from the word of observers. And so he was pretty animated, and this appealed to the leaders of the NSDAP, who watched him, and they're like, man, we need this guy on our team. We need him, man. We need his passion and his energy. And it was really on that day, September 12th, 1919, that Hitler joined the Nazi Party, and he would then proceed over the next.
Were they Nazis at this time?
Well, it's the NSDAP, right? I mean,
Okay.
yeah, it was the Nationalist Socialist German Workers' Party. And so, we call it the Nazi Party. It's what eventually the German shortening of Nationalist Socialist becomes Nazi. But yeah, I mean, the NSDAP, this was it. This was.
And he was really attracted to those nationalist elements, and they
Right.
already had a pretty specific hatred of the Jewish population, and he really identified with that.
Yep. And so, this will be our last slide here. From 1920 to 1923, Hitler spoke to audiences of varying sizes. People really liked the way he spoke, and it was something that he had studied with his time in the military, in his propaganda, how to spin things, how to take something you believe in and make it appealing to the masses. According to Kershaw, above all, what came naturally to Hitler was to stoke up the hatred of others by pouring out to them the hatred that was so deeply embedded in himself. By 1921, he took over the reins of the NSDAP and would, for the next 2 years, begin preparing for his takeover in 1923. Kershaw makes a fantastic point that we'll close with. It was as a propagandist, not as an ideologue, with a unique or special set of political ideas, that Hitler made his mark in these early years. He took aspects of action that the Socialist Party was engaging in, the Weimar Republic was engaging in, and he could spin it in a way that made the Weimar Republic appear to be actual criminals to the general population. And we're going to see when we cover his Munich beer hall push, we're going to see how he took the trial for that and turn it into a massive stage and platform for his beliefs. And it's at that moment that Hitler becomes a known figure in Germany. So there you go. You got any questions?
Yeah. So one thing I was thinking about, is there like what would you characterize the difference between a Volkic group and some of these extreme political parties? Is there a real difference? Is there an element of violence within the Volkic groups that wasn't necessarily present within some of these extreme political groups that Hitler was kind of set to investigate?
My understanding is that Volkic groups are political parties.
Okay.
If I'm gonna Google it real quick and see what it says here, but just going to simple Wikipedia here. The Volkic movement was a German ethnic and nationalist movement active from the late 19th century up until the Nazi era.
So could the
And
term almost be used interchangeably with some of these if you're nationalist?
well, yeah, I mean, they called socialist groups Volkic groups. Anytime that there was a hatred of people as a result of their ethnicity, I think that was basically Volkic. That was a Volkic group. So it says here, the Volkic movement was not a homogenous set of beliefs, but rather a variegated subculture that rose in opposition to the sociocultural changes of modernity. It reminds me a lot of what we talked about in Iran. That hatred toward the westernization, or the un-Iranicizing or the un-Persianicizing of Persia, of history, of culture. Anytime people feel like their culture is under duress, under attack
From outsiders.
from outsiders, that I think that the term Germany used for the people who were really vehemently opposed to changing the German way of life, they used the term Volkic for that. And so, it's because Hitler's group ends up being the most prominent, that ends up capturing all of German attention. It tends to be, I think, associated with conservative, far right wing groups. But it certainly, I don't think it started as right wing only. It was just people who did not want the German way of life to end. So, all this, you keep in mind, their neighbor to the east, Russia, was right in the heart of a communist revolution at this time. So we're talking about a fear that even America eventually has, right? The fear of communism spreading and uprooting a way of life for an entire population of people. And so there you go, man.
Yeah, that sounds good.
All right, I'm going to stop the recording real quick. And kids, you can expect maybe every other day. I don't know. We'll see. Maybe every day. I don't know. We're waiting for word from the district. We don't want to overwhelm you with too much at this point, but we're going to do our best to keep you up to speed with content, as those YouTubers call it. So let's make some content, Novelli.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, hey, it's nice outside. You got other plans for the day? I'm going to do something with my leadership kids too. I got to figure out what I'm going to do there. I got to talk with Wenzel, but
I'm going to take a walk, I think. And I got
Mhm.
some other schoolwork to do, some graduate school stuff, and then
Good.
Just hanging out, I guess.
Good. To my kids out there that are still waiting to make up your time rights, I've sent you an email. Would like you to get back to me by tomorrow. Please, I'd like to get that going. I have a plan for it. So go ahead and check your email if you missed the time right. And I'll be updating the interactive notebook as well with different activities. Novelli, if you'd like, I can share my IMB with you if you want to get that out to your kids. It's totally up to you. Might be a little easier than having to,
Yeah.
I don't know how copies and all that get disseminated, but another strength of the electronic IMB.
Yeah, you can share that with me.
All right, and then you guys can get that out to your kids. But all right, y'all. Well, hey, we'll be in touch here in the next couple days. But you guys take care out there. Stay healthy. Wash your hands 20 seconds every time. But all right, Novelli.